Hi there guys, my name is Jacob and welcome back to the channel. Now in this video I am going to run you guys through my 2026 February solar stats, and I apologise for it being so late after February ended. To be honest, March has just got away with me. I was ill for the first couple of weeks and work has just been absolutely relentless lately. So I just haven't found the time to make this video. But I just thought today I'm just going to get it done, get it posted, and then we can move on, because March's solar stats will need to be posted next week because we're nearly in April, which is crazy to say. This year just seems to be flying by. But nevertheless, here we are, so let's get cracking. Now, just for people who may have never seen these videos before and don't know anything about the system that I have at my house, I'm just going to run you through a little bit of information. So I have 13 solar panels on my semi-detached house. They are 440 watts each, which amounts to about 5.7 kilowatt hours of power that the panels can produce as a peak. Now, they are all run by a 5 kilowatt hybrid inverter, and I have a 9.5 kilowatt hour battery, which is GivEnergy, and so is the inverter. I've also got an EV charger and also an EV itself. And all my solar panels have Tigo Optimisers fitted to them as well. That just gives anyone some information, so it makes sense when I go through the rest of the data. But I hope that makes sense anyway. Now, the tariff that I'm currently with Octopus Energy, and I am on Octopus Go for my import tariff. Now, currently that gives me cheap electricity overnight at about 8.5 pence per kilowatt hour. The day rate is very expensive. It's nearly 30 pence a kilowatt hour. But as I mentioned previously, because I've got a battery, I do not use the day rate. So, you know, the day rate for me is basically irrelevant because I never ever draw power in the day. I charge my battery on cheap energy overnight. I charge my EV on cheap energy overnight. And then the battery itself runs my house for the rest of the day. So that is not a problem at all. But from what I've heard online and read online, that Octopus Go 8.5 pence per kilowatt hour rate is about to drop as of April 1st. Now, I have not had any confirmation of this from Octopus. However, I've seen other people seem to be getting emails stating what their new rates are going to be. Now, as I say, I've not had an email from Octopus, so I hope I'm still included in the reduction. But I've heard that the 8.5 pence is going to be dropping to around the 6 pence mark, which, you know, that will be a nice reduction. And certainly make a difference to things like charging the EV, because, you know, that is quite a big reduction. Now, as I have solar panels, I also have an export tariff, and for that I use Octopus Outgoing. Now, this used to pay 15 pence per kilowatt, but now it's reduced to 12 pence. So, you know, not bad. It was, you know, quite a big reduction. I think it works out to be about a 20% reduction. But now that they are potentially dropping the import rate from 8.5p to 6p, that kind of makes up for the drop in export. So, you know, the 6p and 12p, there's quite a difference between those figures again, rather than it being 8.5p and 12p, because, you know, you want that margin to be as big as you can get, really. So I'm quite happy with that if I do in fact get that reduction. Right then, let's move on to February solar stats. Now, for the total month's generation, I managed to generate 157.5 kilowatt hours for the month of February. Now, that was an okay figure. It certainly beat January. January was around 130 kilowatts. So we beat January. However, when I look back on 2025's figures, there was actually a big drop off this year. And I think it worked out to be around 22% less in February 2026 than we generated in February of 2025. So this year really has been quite a poor start to the year, because January was also down on last year's figures. So, you know, first 2 months of the year are down. That is not a good start. And I'll be honest, we're already a long way through March now, and it's looking like March is also going to be down on last year. So it's been a really rough start to the year. Now, that's not to say, you know, I haven't generated a lot of energy, but I was hoping we would get close with last year. But I think last year was just an incredible year for solar. So Not a great start to the year, but we'll see how the rest of the year goes. Now, the best day of the month for me of February was the 14th. And that day worked out to be 17 kilowatt hours for the day. So that was a really good day, especially when you're thinking February time. That was very good. However, the worst day was the 3rd. And on the 3rd, we barely made 1 kilowatt for the entire 1 kilowatt hour for the entire day. So that was a really poor day. But to be honest, it was thick grey cloud, very dark and gloomy, and the start of February. So, you're still in winter. So it's to be expected, I guess. But we don't want many of those days where we only make 1 kilowatt hour, because that really affects the generation for the month. Now, across the whole month, as I mentioned before, all my panels have Tigo Optimisers fitted to them. And this just helps with shading. So when it is dark and gloomy, or the shade from a nearby tree, the Tigo Optimisers optimise the panels to work as efficiently as they can. And when one panel might have some shade on it, it means the whole system doesn't drop and lose efficiency. Now, in February, the optimizers only saved me 4 kilowatt hours. So they didn't save me all that much. There obviously wasn't a lot of shading. But in previous months gone by, they have saved me quite a lot. So it definitely it differs from month to month as to how effective the optimizers are. Now, for anybody looking to get solar panels and thinking, are optimizers worth it? To be honest, from a payback, return on investment, I would say the optimizers are probably not worth it. Certainly not worth the cost I paid for them, purely because it's going to take a long, long time for me to get that money back, just on what they save me. However, from the point of I want the system to be running as efficient as possible, from that perspective, I think they are worth it, because just from my own peace of mind and my own satisfaction, I like to know that my system is generating as much as it can, and the optimizers help me do that. So from that perspective, I am glad I had them, but from a purely financial perspective, probably not worth it just for anyone considering them. But obviously it differs from system to system. It depends how much shading you might have from nearby houses, nearby trees, different things like that. So make sure you take that into consideration if you're thinking about getting solar panels yourself. Now, let's move on to electricity costs for the month of February. Now, including the standing charge, my total electricity bill for February was £42.91. And that was for importing 327.8 kilowatt hours from the grid. Now, as I mentioned, we generated 157 kilowatt hours, but I actually export a lot of that generated energy. A lot of the energy that I actually use, I import on a cheap rate overnight. So that is why that figure is a lot bigger than what I generated. If I ran my system kind of trying to consume as much as I generate, then that figure would be a lot lower. But I don't run it like that. I run it trying to optimize and get the most financial gain out of the system. And for me, that means exporting as much energy as I can in the day and importing as much as I need overnight, because financially it works out a lot better that way. Now, my EV cost for the month out of that £42 figure was around £10. And I drove approximately 440 miles, with that £10. So I think that's really good value for money. And when you think about petrol and diesel costs right now, to drive 440 miles, you would be looking at a considerable cost, a lot higher than £10. So it's another reason why I'm really, really glad that we switched to an EV late last year, because the current situation is making it very obvious that it's the way to go for the majority of people. And if you can get an EV, if you can afford to change to an EV, I would highly recommend it. Not just from a financial perspective, but from just a enjoyment perspective as well. It is so much nicer driving an EV than it ever was driving a petrol or diesel. So something to consider. My gas bill for the month of February was £35.90, and that does include the standing charge. So that's some central heating, some heating hot water for showers, and the standing charge. So quite a low figure. And that is mostly because we use a lot of electric heating in the house, using space heaters as much as we can, because they're cheap to run when you can get that energy cheap overnight and use it in the daytime. So export income for the month of February was £20.38, and that was for sending 135.9 kilowatt hours back to the grid. And that would have been, I imagine, mostly at the 12 pence, I think, figure, because I think the figures changed in February, but I might be wrong. So some of that might be at 15 pence, some of it might be at 12 pence, but I honestly cannot remember when that changed. But either way, nearly 136 kilowatt hours to the grid, and export income, like I said, £20.38. So if we add all those figures up, we get a total bill for February of £58.43. Now, my hope is that February is the last month of the winter time that I'm going to be charged for energy usage, because from March, all being well, if the weather picks up and I can export more to the grid because we're getting more solar, then I'm hoping March's bill will actually be a credit back to my account. Now, when I look back at last year's figures, that is exactly what happened. From March, I got a credit on my bill every single month till around October. And ultimately, those credits end up paying for my winter bills. So even though I said I had a charge on my account for the month of February, I personally won't be paying that bill. The credit on my account will be paying that bill. So effectively, the solar panels are making me have, no bill every single month, which is a fantastic achievement. So yeah, I did get a charge for February, but I won't actually be paying that myself, if you know what I mean. Hope that makes sense. Now, you might have seen in my last video, I told you guys about a company called Axel Energy, and it's basically a way to increase your export income. They basically pay you £1 per kilowatt hour that you export to the grid in their specific sessions that they run. So it's very similar to an Octopus saving session, where Octopus tell you about an hour in the day that they either want you to save energy or use energy if it's free energy, and you just make the most of that hour. So in my next video, I am going to let you know my 1 month review of Axel Energy, and I'll give you a sneak preview. It's very, very positive. In that month, I've had 3 sessions and they've all gone very well. So that ultimately has contributed to a higher export income for the month of March. If you're interested in trying Axel Energy for yourself, there will be a link in the description box of this video, and you can try them out and you will get £25 for free just for signing up using my link. So it's well worth using the link if you're interested in trying them. So as I say, check out the description box of the video and click the link. Have a read about what they do and how it works. And if it interests you, then of course, sign up and get that £25. Right then, guys, I'll leave it there because this video has been long enough. But if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button. And I'll catch you hopefully very soon in the next one.